Hello and thank you for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundell, for your in-depth monthly horoscope for December. Now, if you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now. Please also check out my year 2021 special offer personal horoscope package. You can get the whole of year 21 and also the rest of year 2020 if you order this year. Plus you can get your character analysis, all based on your time, date and place of birth. This is going to give you searing insights. No two reports are the same. It's totally based on you, the individual. So please check that out beneath this video, and there is 30% off at this time. Hello Aquarius and welcome to December. Now, I'm sure you've heard an awful lot of talk about Saturn and Jupiter moving into the sign of Aquarius. First Saturn on the 17th and Jupiter on the 19th, and coming into a conjunction for the first time since 1405 on the 21st, the winter solstice. And there's no doubt about it that that is a critical event in world history. But I think what's going to be much less publicised before I share this information with you is the fact that this is a month when we see a big shift in the Eclipse series. And if you cast your mind back to the end of November, we had a lunar eclipse in your sister air sign of Gemini. And that is truly significant too, because over the last 2.5, 3 years, we've had a succession of eclipses in the signs of Cancer and Capricorn, which for Aquarius people, especially if you've got more than just the sun in Aquarius, has meant there's been fervent activity in the 12th house, having Saturn and Pluto in the 12th house. Yikes, that's tough. And then Jupiter there as well. And then on the other side of the heavens, the 6th house, which is about work, structures. It is about precision. It can be being of service, but it can also be about physical health. So the physical health dimension has been challenged by the psychological, emotional, subconscious health stuff. And remember, Pluto is very much about the underworld. So anything that's been kept down or repressed, or whether that's secret enemies, also the 12th house, it really has been such a tough time for many Aquarius people over the last couple of years. But of course, Pluto has been in that 12th house since 2008. So if you can track your situation back, especially if you're interested in secondary progressions and directions in evolutionary astrology, you might see that it's been a very difficult time for a lot of Aquarius people of certain ages. So the big news is that those guys, Saturn and Jupiter, and Saturn being the co-regents of Aquarius, go into Aquarius together. Remember, Saturn had a brief sojourn from the 22nd of March to the 2nd of August in 220 earlier. But they're going in together, and that is going to be critical. But that eclipse series that was reignited at the end of November in Gemini, a lunar eclipse, which was really saying to you, and continues to say in the first 2 weeks of this month, what do you want to do with your time management? What is your future plans really about? Are your hopes aligned to your highest potential, which is the sun in Sagittarius? And the lunar eclipse in Gemini is much more immediate stuff around joys, children, risk-taking in some ways. And it's just juggling your creative output and talent to feature in your longer term plan in a way that's joined up. And if it's not joined up and it's discordant, for example, if you haven't got a very happy love life but your friendships dominate, perhaps you need to focus more on your love life. Or if your love life's blissful but you never join up with anyone else, you're being asked to network more, be more outgoing. So as we come into this new month, we've broken that cycle of bruising opposition between Cancer and Capricornian energy, which has been as hard for your sign as all the cardinal signs of Aries, Cancer, Libra and Capricorn, which have more directly felt that energy in a square opposition or conjunction. But for you, it's been much more subtle, but still very powerful. So I think you're just going to feel that there is a sort of like, you're going to look up and around and think, do you know, life can change. COVID has been absolutely awful at so many levels. But there is going to be some Aquarian principles coming through, even from the sun being in Sagittarius, which you're going to really enjoy, like the concept of community, the concept of being collegiate, the concept of person kind, of all its different individual members, which may be some people who are very individualistic, which can be represented by Aquarian energy, but also people who are actually quite traditional, because Aquarius energy has a duality to it. But I think there's going to be a much greater vibe about community, coming together, working collectively. Cooperativism means that we don't have to lose our individuality. We join together in situations where we retain our spark of our individual, but still find ways to collaborate. So that's going to be the big theme of this month. And it's enhanced furthermore by Mercury moving on the 1st into Sagittarius. But Venus, the planet of love and affection, is right high in the sky the first 2 weeks of this month. And in work, it could be a case of who as much as what you know, but a lucky break is possible. We then have a glorious link between the Sun and Mars. Mars is in a great zone for you in terms of making you more physically active, more speaking your truth, wanting to show more energy around technology potentially. You may find yourself thinking about a new mode of transport. And the Sun in the 11th house links with Mars in the 3rd house. So your voice can get heard. So where you may have felt that others have excluded you, isolated you, pushed you out without a word, it's been so ruthless at times. Now it all comes back to you. It's your values that are going to lead the world. Seriously, it's that profound. And it's not just because of Jupiter being the ruler of Sagittarius coming into your sign. It is because of this Sagittarius energy on its own. Because on the 14th, there's a solar eclipse. So we get the next phase of this eclipse series. The first one, Gemini lunar. Second one, Sagittarius solar. So you can see the axis between the two because they're opposite signs. And this links with Mars. So the last 2 weeks of this year and the first 5.5 months of year 2021 gives you a fabulous opportunity to really think big, think long term, raise your heart to your values, the things that really, really do make you feel blessed and give you a sense of purpose that goes beyond the material. But you're going to communicate and move around and things are really moving for you. It's glorious. I'm so excited for myself too. And then, of course, on the 15th, Venus moves into Sagittarius. So if you're single, someone in your friendship group could make your pulse race before the end of the year. If you're involved, celebrate the things you have in common. Don't sweat the small stuff, unless it's a really grievous difference of opinion. But I still think there's one possible person or situation around you that may show itself in the last 2 weeks of this year and could prove to be profoundly disappointing. There still may be someone who's a bit of a black arts merchant. You know, the kind of person who doesn't do it the Aquarius way of just being truthful, even if our truth may be different to someone else's truth. This is the kind of person who's really into those political mechanizations. You know, they don't really own it. They're doing it behind the scenes. Someone could be a little bit of a backstabber. I can only be honest about that. But a ruthless opponent may not show their hand, but they could be there the last 2 weeks of this year. Keep your guard up still. Don't believe everybody is going to buy into this new potential way of running the world, because they won't. There's going to be vested interest that are going to want to keep it exactly like it always was and keep the masses down. So the potential to come together is something we're going to have to fight for. However, on the 17th, followed by the 19th, we see Saturn and Jupiter come together on the 21st, and that's glorious because Jupiter's about growth, but it doesn't do well in Capricorn. So every 12 years, in terms of the Jupiter cycle, we see a stock market crash. But I feel that Jupiter moving into Aquarius is going to make us much more enterprising, but it may be enterprising around things like new technologies, particularly in terms of the environment, but as an individual Aquarian, this is saying for the next year, be enterprising, because it can be your lucky year, but not if you sit back and wait for things to happen. Jupiter can make us a bit indolent and a bit, overconfident. Don't do that. I think Saturn's going to modify that potential to be a little bit just sitting back. Saturn's going to say, look, you've got to get cracking and work for it. Now, I will say that Uranus, your modern ruler, does continue in retrograde in the sign of Taurus, which is the fourth house. Still disruptive stuff around where you live, who you live with, and how. Maybe some truths around the family have still yet to be completely ventilated and cleared. Maybe that square between Mars and Pluto could be you saying how you feel. You really telling the people that have been very unfair or unkind exactly how ruthless they've been, and they won't like it one little bit. But just be aware that with the Sun and Mercury moving on the 21st into Capricorn, that if you do go for it and try to be very assertive about your truth, some people will not like it and they may cut the ties to you. So it's about modulating to find the right balance in your approach. But Mercury forges a terrific link with Uranus on Christmas Day. You might be surprised by who you hear from on Christmas Day. Very, very pleasantly surprised. In fact, one of the people who may not been particularly kind could suddenly get in touch. And then the Sun's linking brilliantly with Uranus before the end of the year as well. That idea that you've had on the back burner for some while, that you could run from home, perhaps to do with technology, don't dismiss it. It could work. You just need to believe. Jupiter will help you believe. Then on the 31st, we have the full moon in Cancer. So we're repeating again that axis, but this happens every year. So don't fret too much about this. Your time to reflect goes on through to around about the 19th of January. It depends each year. The Sun can move into Aquarius either on the 20th or the 21st. So this period from now until then generally is a time of reflection. But actually, Venus is in a very sociable part of your situation the last 2 weeks of this year, and Mercury is going to be in your sign early next year. So you're going to go into next year with a real spring in your step, whatever the implications of COVID. The only thing is your two ruling planets are going to be squabbling for the first 7 months of 21 in the guise of Saturn and Uranus. And we are going to see some people resisting this new way that we need to run the world. And there will be other people who would take quite radical approaches, direct intervention, being very outspoken, perhaps trying to upset things in a quite forceful way, and it could create quite a lot of frustration. So I don't want you to think that Saturn and Jupiter is going to be a panacea, solve every problem the Earth's got. It just ain't that simple. But I do feel that this bruising phase of psychological warfare, although you could have some of it come to the fore again as the curtain comes down on 20, I do feel, even though Pluto stays in the 12th house through to 23, and then goes into your sign, goes back 23, goes back to 24 to Aquarius, where it will be for a very long time, I do feel that transitional period is going to be less difficult than the last few years have been. So what a year it's been. I do feel, do try to regenerate your sense of hope and optimism. There's been a lot of disappointing stuff, I feel, especially around the authenticity of facts, a lot of manipulation, and that's been incredibly and profoundly upsetting. And perhaps the Eclipse series in Gemini and Sagittarius is about us rediscovering the need for truth and accuracy in people's beliefs or the way they express them, that it's not anyone can have any kind of belief and put it out there and it gains traction. Somehow or another, we have to have responsibility with freedom. And I think in the Western world, freedom has become such an abused principle. I feel that generally the more traditional influence of Aquarius needs to be felt. You know, a little bit of old world charm of good manners, turning up on time, caring about people, being much more collective in our approach. rather than this very Capricornian vibe of just being focused on materialism. So you may think that's very political on my part. I apologise if that doesn't sit well with you, but I think for us Aquarians generally, we are people that very often see things down the line, see how we'd like things to be. Not every Aquarius is a flag waver of truth and integrity, but a lot of Aquarians are very, very decent folks. So if there's any way that you can work to build up your community, help those that are less fortunate, I'll be doing the same, then we'll be living the energy of Saturn and Jupiter together and this wonderful solar eclipse in Sagittarius in a really apt way. But for now, have as peaceful and safe Christmas as you possibly can. And thank you so much for joining me throughout 2020. Good luck and goodbye for now.